She had made it 2 years. 2 years of swallowing the truth every single morning, of watching him move through this house like he owned the air in it, of making sure her daughter never wandered too close, never laughed too loud, never gave her away. 2 years of a secret so heavy it had started reshaping the bones in her chest. And then on a cold Tuesday morning, with nothing but a briefcase and a blank expression, he looked at her across the marble floor of his own foyer and said the words she had always known were coming. "Get out of my house." She picked up her bag. She walked to the door. She got all the way to the handle. And then something inside her, something 5 years old and innocent and entirely his, made her stop. She turned around. The entire room went still. And Stella said the thing she had been carrying since before she even knew his name. "That child upstairs. She is yours." Welcome to Crossworld Romance Stories, besties. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button right now and join this family, because the story you are about to hear is one you are going to want to tell someone. Like this video, drop a comment telling me where in the world you are watching from, and let us get into it. The night Stella Osei made the worst and most life-altering decision of her life, it was raining in Seoul. Not the soft kind of rain that makes a city look cinematic and forgiving. The cold, relentless kind that soaks through coats and certainty and leaves a person standing on a wet pavement wondering how they arrived at this particular corner of their own story. She was 24 years old. She was 3 months behind on a debt that had a name and a deadline and a man behind it who did not accept tears as payment. The debt was not hers originally. It belonged to her mother, who had borrowed from people who lent money the way some people plant seeds, quietly, patiently, and with the full expectation of a harvest. Her mother had gotten sick before she could pay it back. And Stella, who had come to Seoul from Accra with a scholarship that covered tuition and absolutely nothing else, had inherited both the love of a woman who gave everything and the bill that came with it. She had tried every legitimate thing first. That part matters. She had worked 2 jobs for 8 months. She had sold everything in her apartment worth selling. She had eaten rice for dinner more nights than she was willing to count. And she had still come up short in a way that made short feel like an ocean. The man who held the debt had come to her apartment on a Thursday evening and sat in her only chair and explained her options with the patience of someone who had given this particular speech many times. He had mentioned, almost as an aside, a club on the east side of the city. "Good money," he said, masked. "No one has to know who you are." He left his card on the table when he left. Stella had stood in her kitchen for a long time after he was gone. She had looked at the card. She had not picked it up. Then the following Wednesday, she picked it up. She told herself it was temporary. People told themselves that about a lot of things that turned out not to be temporary at all. But she meant it when she said it. Just enough to get the debt down to something manageable. Just once, maybe twice. She wore a mask that covered everything above her mouth. She kept her head down. She kept her eyes somewhere else entirely. The club was the kind of place that existed in a part of the city that did not appear on tourist maps. Dark in the specific way that meant the darkness was intentional. A world operating inside its own rules, sealed off from the one outside. The men who came there were wealthy in the way that meant they had long stopped worrying about what things cost. They wore expensive watches and looked at everything in the room like it belonged to them already. The first night was the worst, and then it became something she did not think about while it was happening. She stored it somewhere separate. In a part of herself, she sealed shut after every shift and reopened only when she needed the money to feel real. It was on her 3rd week there that he came in. She did not know his name. She did not know anything about him except that the entire energy of the room shifted when he walked through the door, the way air moves differently around something large. He was tall in the particular way that has nothing to do with height and everything to do with the space a person occupies by simply existing. Dark suit. A jaw that looked like it had been carved by someone who took their time. He was not the oldest man in the room. He was not the loudest. But every other man in that room knew where he was at every moment. The way animals in a field always know where the storm is coming from. He had been drinking before he arrived. Not sloppy, not loose, but something behind his eyes was softer than it would have been sober, and his laugh when he laughed was real in a way that felt accidental. Stella kept her distance. She was good at keeping distance. It was the skill she had perfected most in that place. But there was a moment near the end of the night, late enough that the room had thinned and the music had dropped to something quieter, when she turned from the bar and walked directly into him. Not because she was careless. because he had moved without sound in a way that a man his size should not have been able to manage. He looked at her. She looked back. Something passed between them that she had no word for and would not have used a word for even if she had won. She told herself later that she had not made a decision, that it simply happened the way some things happened when a person was tired and scared and had been surviving alone for so long that the warmth of another human being felt like water after a drought. She told herself that. It did not entirely hold up under examination, but it was what she had, and she kept it. By the time the pale gray light of very early morning had started pressing against the windows, she was already awake. She was already pulling on her coat. He was still sleeping, one arm across the sheet where she had been, his face completely unguarded in the way that people's faces became when they forgot to be anyone. She looked at him for one moment. Just one. Then she left. She never went back to the club. She found the money another way. Borrowed from a woman at her church who lent it without interest and without a lecture, which was the most generous thing anyone had done for her in a long time. She worked. She paid back everyone slowly and carefully, and with the particular satisfaction of someone closing a door they intended to keep closed. 6 weeks later, she bought a pregnancy test at a pharmacy 2 neighborhoods from her apartment so that no one she recognized would see her. She sat on the floor of her bathroom with the result in her hand for a very long time. She was not crying. She was doing something more complicated than crying. She was making a decision in real time, watching it form in her own chest, feeling the weight of it settle. She tried to find him. That also matters. She went back to the club once, in the daytime, and spoke to the manager, who told her with a polished blankness that he had no information about private clients, had never had any, and would not be changing that policy. She had no name. She had no number. She had one night and a memory of a face she had only seen partially unguarded. She went home. She made another decision. She was going to have this baby, and she was going to raise her, and she was going to do it without asking anyone for anything she had not earned. Lily Osei was born on a Thursday evening in early spring, 7 pounds and 2 ounces, with a mouth that was already forming opinions and eyes that looked at everything with the focused intensity of someone taking notes. Stella held her in the hospital bed and felt something rearrange inside her permanently, the way earthquakes rearrange coastlines. Not destruction, reconfiguration. She was magnificent from the very first day. She looked like her mother in many ways. The wide forehead, the stubborn lower lip, the laugh that came from somewhere deep and gave no warning. But there were things about her that Stella looked at sometimes in the quiet moments, when Lily was sleeping or concentrating very hard on a drawing or asking a question so precise it made Stella blink. Things that did not come from her. The particular stillness Lily could drop into without warning. A child-sized version of a stillness that Stella had felt once, briefly, in the early hours of a morning she had decided not to think about. She did not think about it. She filed it in the sealed part and kept moving. By the time Lily was 3, Stella had found the agency, a discreet service that matched domestic workers with high-net-worth households in Seoul. The pay was more than she had made in 2 previous jobs combined. The conditions were structured and professional. She would live in the household, which solved the problem of childcare in the only way a desperate and creative mind could solve it at that particular moment. Lily would come with her. It was not conventional. She made it work. The household she was allocated to was in a private district on the north side of the city. The address alone told her the kind of money involved. The kind that did not need to announce itself because it had long since passed the point where announcement was necessary. She arrived on a Monday morning with 2 suitcases, a backpack full of Lily's things, and the particular careful composure of a woman who had learned that first impressions in wealthy households were auditions. Lily held her hand very tightly in the car and then let go the moment they reached the gate, because Lily never stayed nervous for long. The head of household staff met them at the service entrance. His name was Mr. O. He was a compact, precise man in his late 50s with the expression of someone who had worked in powerful houses long enough to find very little surprising. He went through the household rules with the efficiency of a person who had given this briefing many times. Stella listened carefully. She noted everything. She asked 2 questions, both practical. He looked at her with what she understood was approval, though he did not say so. And then the door at the far end of the entrance hall opened. Stella looked up, and the world tilted on its axis so completely and so silently that she was astonished no one else in the room seemed to notice. She recognized him the way you recognized something you had been trying not to think about for 3 years. The shape of the shoulders first, then the stillness, then the jaw, the face, the exact particular quality of his presence in a room. All of it arrived in her body before her mind had finished processing a single word of it. Kang Du-yoon, 32 years old. The kind of name that people in this city said carefully and quietly, with a specific tone reserved for things that had teeth. She would learn the full details of that name later, not that evening, not from him, but from the very careful way Mr. O said it, and from the things she would see in the days that followed. But in that first moment, standing at the service entrance with her suitcase and her daughter, all she knew was that the man she had left sleeping in a club room 3 years ago was standing 15 feet away. He was looking at Mr. O and not at her, and he had absolutely no idea she existed. He had not seen her face that night. She had kept the mask on. He had been drinking. He had moved on the very next morning because to a man like him, she understood instinctively, that night had simply been a night. He had probably not thought of it since. She had built a child out of it. He glanced in her direction once, briefly, the way people glanced at new staff. Not dismissive, not unkind. Simply registering and filing and moving on. Then he walked back through the door he had come from, and the room breathed again. Stella stood very still. She looked at Mr. O. She said, calmly, "Where should I put my bags?" She made her decision in that hallway in about 30 seconds. She would do the job. She would save enough money, 6 months, maybe 8 at the outside, to hire a proper caregiver for Lily so she could remove her daughter from this house and this man's orbit before anyone connected anything to anything. She would keep her head down. She would keep Lily close. And she would not, under any circumstances, say a single word. That decision felt solid and rational and entirely manageable. She had not yet met Lily at full operating capacity. The first week passed without incident, which in retrospect was simply the universe giving her a false sense of security. Stella worked the West Wing. She learned the rhythms of the house, which was large enough that entire days could pass without crossing paths with the man who owned it. He left early. He returned late. He moved through the spaces he inhabited with the focused economy of someone who had never once spent time in a room without purpose. His name in this house was always Sir. Mr. Kong in formal contexts. Never Du-yoon, not by anyone on staff, not ever. Stella used Sir when she had to and silence when she could. It worked. He looked through her the way people in his position looked through domestic staff, not unkindly, simply as though the household machinery operated on a different plane of reality from the one he inhabited. She was grateful for it. She was also, somewhere underneath the gratitude, in a place she refused to look at directly, something else entirely. But she did not look at that place. She had practice. The first time she saw what he truly was, really saw it, was on a Wednesday evening in the 3rd week. She had been working the hallway cabinet near the east wing when the voices started in the room below. Low at first, then not low at all. She had heard arguments before in wealthy households. This was not an argument. This had a different quality entirely. The kind of silence before sound that made the air feel pressurized. She should have moved away immediately. She should have gone back to the West Wing and stayed there. She did not move immediately enough. The sound that came from below was short and absolute, and followed by a silence so complete that for one terrible moment she thought she had imagined it. Then a second sound, identical. Then voices again, very calm, giving instructions in the particular tone of men who had already decided everything and were simply managing the aftermath. She pressed herself against the wall. Her heart was doing something she could feel in her throat. She moved, quickly and quietly, back to the West Wing and into the linen closet and stood in the dark among the folded sheets with her hand pressed over her own mouth. 2 men had done something that displeased Kang Du-yoon. Those 2 men would not be doing anything else. She had understood that from 15 feet away and 1 floor up without seeing a single thing clearly. It was in the quality of the silence afterward, in the way the house itself seemed to settle into a different weight. She stayed in the linen closet for 11 minutes. She counted every one. When she came out, she went directly to the room where Lily was sleeping and sat on the edge of the small bed and looked at her daughter's face in the dark. The wide forehead, the stubborn lower lip, the little fist curled against her cheek. And she made the plan more concrete in her mind. 6 months. 8 at the absolute outside. She would save everything. She would get them out. And right now, If you are feeling what I am feeling watching this woman hold it all together alone, drop a comment and tell me. And if someone you know needs a story like this one tonight, share this video with them. Now let us keep going, because the next part of this story is where everything starts to quietly unravel. The second month was when Lily discovered the news channel. It happened the way most of Lily's discoveries happened. Accidentally, inevitably, and with consequences that radiated outward in ways no reasonable adult could have predicted. Stella had been giving her daughter the small television in their room on weekend mornings. 3 channels reliably. Lily's preferred channel ran cartoons until noon. She knew exactly how to find it. She had known since she was 4. What Lily had established through methodical research over 2 Saturday mornings, while Stella believed she was coloring, was that the television in the common staff sitting room had significantly more channels than the one in their room. On the 3rd Saturday, left alone for 20 minutes, Lily climbed onto the sitting room sofa, picked up the remote, and began her investigation. She found the cartoon channel quickly, but then she found another channel, one that caught her attention not because she understood what was on it, but because of the face filling the screen. A man's face. Serious. The kind of serious that children noticed before adults did, because children had not yet learned to look past faces to the words coming out of them. She watched for a moment. The man was talking about something she did not understand, but she found his face interesting in a way she could not have explained. She watched for another minute. Then the cartoons called her back, and she moved on. The following Saturday, she found the channel again, and the one after that. It became a small ritual she kept to herself, the way children kept certain things quietly, not from dishonesty, but from a vague instinct that this particular thing was theirs. She would find her cartoon channel first, properly, where her mother expected her to be. And then sometimes, just for a minute, she would flip to the other one, the one with the serious man's face. She did not know his name. She did not need to. He was simply the face she had started looking for before she settled into her cartoons. Stella noticed the news channel on twice when she entered the sitting room. Both times Lily said she had pressed it by accident. Both times Stella changed it back to cartoons without further comment. Something moved in the back of her mind on the second occasion. A small, slow-moving unease she did not examine directly. She had too many other things requiring her direct attention. She did not know, and would not know for some time, that the face on the news channel belonged to the man whose house they were living in. The 3rd month was when Shin Suyin arrived. She came on a Friday afternoon in the kind of car that made the gate staff stand a little straighter. Do-yoon's fiancé, 29 years old, from a family whose wealth and Do-yoon's world intersected in the specific way that suggested the engagement had been discussed at a level above both of them before either had formally agreed to it. She was beautiful in the careful, curated way of someone who understood beauty as a currency and managed it with discipline. Sharp cheekbones, hair that moved with precision, eyes that swept every room within the first 4 seconds of entering it, and completed their assessment before anyone realized they had been assessed. She walked through the house, the first time the way people walk through houses they had already decided were theirs. Not rudely, proprietorially. There was a difference, and Stella noticed it from across the entrance hall while adjusting the flower arrangement near the window. Suyin noticed her the way people in her position noticed domestic staff. She registered, filed, and moved on. But something made her pause for just a fraction of a second before the filing was complete. A hesitation so brief Stella might have imagined it. Then she moved on. In the weeks that followed, Suyin visited 2 and sometimes 3 times a week. She had a way of appearing in rooms that Stella was cleaning, standing in the doorway, not quite saying anything was wrong, but radiating the distinct possibility of it. When Do-yoon was present, she was different. Warmer, softer, controlled in a different direction entirely. The kind of warm that knew it was being observed and adjusted accordingly. The first time she spoke to Stella directly was in the kitchen. She wanted the good teacups, not the everyday ones. She described them with a level of specificity that told Stella she had already located them and was testing whether Stella had too. Stella found them in the first place she looked. Suyin took them without comment and left. The second time was in the upstairs hallway. She had found Lily coloring on the floor outside Stella's room and was standing over her when Stella came around the corner. Lily looked up at Suyin with the complete composure of a child who found adults interesting rather than intimidating. "Is this yours?" Suyin said to Stella, not looking away from Lily. "She is my daughter. She stays in the staff wing." She does not disturb the household. Suyin looked at Stella then. The assessment in her eyes was not warm. It was the look of someone performing a calculation. She said nothing more and walked away. But Stella had felt it. The way you felt a temperature change before you identified its source. She moved her savings target forward by 3 weeks. Now stay right here because what happens next with this little girl is going to change absolutely everything. If you have not subscribed yet, do it right now and tell me in the comments. Do you think Stella made the right choice staying silent? Let us keep going. Mr. O had seen many things in 23 years of service in powerful households. He had seen marriages dissolve over dinner tables. He had seen business empires discussed in the same breath as grocery lists. He had watched men who commanded armies become uncertain in the presence of their own children. Very little surprised him anymore. He had filed this professional immunity under experience and considered it one of his more useful qualities. He had not, until this week, encountered Lily. He found her on Thursday morning sitting in the main corridor outside the kitchen, conducting what appeared to be a thorough examination of a marble tile she had decided was interesting. She was pressing her finger to different parts of it and making notes in a small notebook she carried in her dress pocket. "You are in the main corridor," he said. "I know," said Lily. She did not look up. "This tile is different from the others. See how this part is darker?" She pointed. Something happened here. Mr. O looked at the tile. It was, in fact, slightly different in its veining from the tiles surrounding it. It had been a replacement, installed 7 years ago after a water damage incident. No one had commented on it in 7 years. "You should not be in the main corridor," he said. "I know." Lily closed her notebook and stood and brushed off her dress with the efficiency of someone concluding a task. "But I was already here before I remembered." She looked up at him. "You have a different face today." Mr. O considered this. "I have the same face I always have." "No." Lily shook her head with authority. "Today it is less serious on the left side." She tapped her own cheek. "Here. Something good happened." Mr. O looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "My daughter called this morning. She is having a baby." Lily's face did the thing it did when she received important information. A brief, complete stillness followed by a smile that seemed to come from somewhere very genuine. "That is the best news," she said. "Babies are very good. I was a baby once. I am aware that you were. Was I a good one?" He looked at her. He thought of his daughter. He thought of the phone call that morning and the sound of his daughter's voice. Bright and a little nervous and full of something that had made him sit down at his desk for a moment before answering his next email. "From what I understand," he said carefully, "you were exceptional." Lily nodded once, satisfied, and went back toward the staff wing. Mr. O watched her go. He stood in the main corridor for a moment longer than was strictly necessary. Then he went back to his duties. That evening he mentioned to Din, in passing, during the usual end-of-day briefing, that the housekeeper's daughter was unusually perceptive for her age. He said it the way he said most things, factually, without editorial. Diyun had looked up from his desk briefly and then back down. He had said nothing, but he had not moved on to the next item on the briefing for a full 3 seconds, which for him was the equivalent of a long pause. Mr. O filed this and said nothing further about it. Suyin came that Friday with a new energy. Sharper, more directed. She moved through the house with the focused attention of someone who had identified a problem and arrived to address it. She found reasons to be in rooms Stella was working in. She commented on the flower arrangements, not quite critically, but in a tone that contained the shape of criticism. She asked Mr. O about the household schedule in enough detail that he answered everything and offered nothing extra, which was his way of communicating that he had noticed the nature of the inquiry. She found Stella in the upstairs hallway late that afternoon and stopped in front of her with the particular positioning of someone who wanted the conversation to happen on their terms. "How long has your daughter been living in the house?" she asked. "For months," Stella said. The same answer she had given Duyun, delivered the same way. "And you think that is appropriate? Bringing a child into a working household." "The agency approved the arrangement," Stella said. "Mr. Kong was informed at the time of my placement." Suyin looked at her. There was something working behind her eyes that Stella could not fully see and did not trust. "She is in the East Wing frequently. She is not supposed to be. When she wanders, I bring her back. It will not happen again. See that it does not." Suyin's voice was smooth, controlled, the voice of someone who had practiced patience as a strategic quality. "I will be spending more time here from next month. I would prefer the household to feel orderly." She walked away. The space she left behind did not feel clean. Stella stood where she was for a moment. Then she went back to work. She added another 2 weeks to her savings calculation. She did the math in her head for the 4th time that day. She could do this. She was so close. She did not see Suyin pause at the end of the corridor and look back at her. She did not see the expression Suyin wore in that moment, the one she kept off her face when anyone important was watching, the one that said she had already decided something and was simply waiting for the right moment to act on it. Stella did not see any of that, but Mr. O did. He was coming around the corner with a household inventory ledger when Suyin paused and looked back. He saw her face in the 3 seconds before she rearranged it. He said nothing. He filed it in the place where he kept things that had not yet shown their full meaning. He had a great deal of space in that place. In a house like this one, it filled up steadily. Now if you are watching this and you already do not trust Suyin, drop a comment and tell me why. And if someone sent you this video, go ahead and subscribe so you never miss what comes next. Because the next morning is the morning that this whole story begins to breathe differently. Diyun found her in the east corridor the following Tuesday. Not Stella. Lily. She was crouched near the baseboard at the bottom of the east staircase, entirely focused on something at floor level. She had, Diyun would later determine, been tracking an ant. The ant had since disappeared into a crack in the baseboard, and Lily was waiting for it to reappear with the patience of someone who had decided waiting was the appropriate response and was not yet willing to revise that position. He almost walked past her. He had walked past her, in fact, taken 3 more steps, before something made him stop and look back. She had not reacted to his footsteps at all. Most people in this house reacted to his footsteps. Not with visible fear, not most of them, but with the particular realignment of posture and expression that said they were aware of him. This child was entirely focused on a crack in the baseboard. "What are you doing?" he said. Lily looked up. Her expression when she looked up was not the expression of a child caught somewhere she should not be. It was the expression of a child being interrupted during important work. "Waiting," she said. "For what?" "The ant went in here." She pointed to the crack. "It will come back out. Things always come back out." Diyun looked at the crack in the baseboard. He looked at the child. He looked at the crack again. "How long have you been waiting?" Lily considered this. "A long time." She paused. "Our ant's fast." "Some are. This one is not fast. She has been in there very long." She tilted her head. "Maybe she is sleeping." "Ants do not sleep the way people sleep." Lily received this information with the seriousness it deserved. "They do something else. They rest in cycles. It is different." She thought about this for a moment. "I rest in cycles too," she said. "My mom says I do not, but I do. I just rest with my eyes open sometimes." "That is still resting." Something moved in his face. Just briefly. Diyun crouched down so that he was at her level. He looked at the crack in the baseboard. They waited. The ant did not come back. Lily looked at him sideways. "You are very patient," she said. "For a grown-up. You are more patient than most grown-ups I know." She seemed to find this accurate rather than flattering. "I practice," she said simply. "My mom says if you want to know a thing you have to be quiet long enough for it to show itself." She considered. The ant is not showing itself. Maybe it found another way out. Lily stood up and dusted her dress with both hands, the gesture she made when concluding something. That is also possible. She looked at him with the direct focus she gave to things she was deciding about. "You found me in your chair." Diyun said nothing. "I am sorry about that." She did not sound devastated by it. She sounded genuinely sorry in the specific way of someone who understood what they had done and was accounting for it honestly. "I followed the spider. And then the cartoons were on. And the chair was very comfortable. It is a comfortable chair." "Do you watch cartoons?" He paused. "Not usually." "You should." She was entirely serious. "They are very calming." "The one about the bear was good." He found his hat. She paused. "Things are better when you find what you are looking for." He looked at her for a moment. Something in that sentence landed somewhere in him that he did not immediately examine. He stood up. "You should go back to the staff wing," he said. "I know." Lily picked up the small notebook from her pocket and made a note. She showed no particular urgency about departing. "What are you writing?" he asked, because the question came before he had decided to ask it. She looked at her notebook. She looked at him. "Things I notice," she said, "so I do not forget them." She put the notebook away and walked back toward the staff wing without rushing, stopping once to look back at the baseboard crack as though giving the ant one final opportunity. Then she rounded the corner and was gone. Dean stood in the east corridor for longer than he had standing time to spare. He had 12 things requiring his attention. He stood there anyway. He was not entirely sure what had just happened. He was entirely sure that something had. When he passed Mr. O 40 minutes later in the main hall, he said, without stopping or looking up from the paper he was carrying, "The housekeeper. What do you know about her?" Mr. O had been waiting for this question for approximately 3 weeks. He answered it with the careful completeness of a man who believed in giving accurate information and allowing the person receiving it to draw their own conclusions. Cameroonian, 27 years old. Came through the agency. Excellent work. Quiet, professional, no complaints from any household member. He paused almost imperceptibly, except from Miss Shin, which in my assessment reflects more on Miss Shin than on the housekeeper. The daughter is 5. She arrived with her when the placement began. The father is not in the picture. Dean stopped walking. He was looking at the paper in his hand. He was not reading it. Not in the picture, he said. She has not mentioned him in any context I am aware of, Mr. O said. In my observation, she manages everything alone. She has done so since before she arrived here. Dean stood with the paper for another moment. Then he walked on. He did not ask another question. But Mr. O, who had worked in powerful houses for 23 years and could read silence the way other people read words, understood that the answer had done something. He went back to his inventory. He allowed himself one small, private expression of satisfaction. Then he smoothed it away and got on with the afternoon. Do not go anywhere, besties. Do not go anywhere, because what Suyin does next is unforgivable, and what Lily does in response is the most extraordinary thing you have ever seen a 5-year-old do. Like this video if you are still with me, and let us get to it. Suyin's ring was a piece of jewelry that existed at the intersection of beauty and statement. 3 carats, cushion cut, the kind of thing that announced itself in a room before its wearer did. She wore it always, which was itself a kind of announcement, the particular language of a woman who wanted the nature of her position clearly understood at all times. She reported it missing on a Thursday morning. She reported it missing with the specific energy of someone who had already decided where it was and who had taken it, and was simply now engaged in the process of making that conclusion public. She gathered the household staff in the main entrance hall with the ease of someone who had always understood herself to have that authority. Dean was not in the house. He had left before dawn for a meeting that would take most of the day. This was not a coincidence. The ring was in my room last night, Suyin said. This morning it is gone. She looked around the assembled staff with an expression that was performing distress while feeling something else entirely. I am not making accusations. I am simply asking if anyone knows anything. No one spoke. Of course no one spoke. Mr. O suggested a thorough search of the house. Suyin agreed to this with the graciousness of someone who already knew what the search would find. Room by room, methodical, the way these things were done. Suyin accompanied the search with the focused attention of someone monitoring an outcome. They reached the staff wing. They reached Stella's room. Stella stood in the doorway with her hands at her sides and her face entirely composed while they searched the small space that contained everything she and her daughter owned. She watched them go through her belongings with the particular dignity of someone who knew they had nothing to hide and understood that this did not always protect you. They did not find the ring in Stella's room. They found it outside. Lily had been in the East Garden that morning, which was one of the permitted spaces, chasing a butterfly she had decided she wanted to observe more closely. She had come back inside through the staff entrance, passing through Stella's room to put down her shoes, and on the floor near the bedside table, catching the morning light in a way that made it look like something dropped by accident or placed deliberately, she had found a ring. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen up close. She had held it up to the window and watched the light go through it, and then put it in her pocket because she planned to show her mother and ask what it was made of and why it did that with the light. She had then forgotten about it in the way 5-year-olds forgot about things when a butterfly became more immediately interesting. When the household member who was searching the East Garden found her and asked what was in her pocket, Lily produced the ring with complete transparency, the way a person produced something they had never considered hiding. Suyin was called to the garden. She looked at the ring in Lily's extended palm and then at Stella, who had come out behind Mr. O, and the expression on Suyin's face in that moment was not surprise. It was the expression of someone watching a plan arrive exactly where they had intended it to go. She stole it, Suyin said. This child was carrying my ring. Lily looked at her with full attention. I found it on the floor, she said. I was going to show my mom. Children do not pick up things that do not belong to them, Suyin said. Her voice had taken on a quality that Stella recognized. The quality of a performance that had an audience in mind. I want her removed from this property. And I want the housekeeper dismissed immediately. Stella stepped forward. Her voice was level. Lily found something on the floor and put it in her pocket to show me. She is 5 years old. She did not steal anything. The ring was in your room. It was on the floor, near the baseboard. My daughter picked it up. Convenient, Suyin said. Very convenient. She looked around at the assembled staff. I want this woman removed from this house today, before Mr. Kong returns. Mr. O said, quietly but clearly, Miss Shin, personnel decisions in this household are made by Mr. Kong. And I am telling you, Suyin said, still performing, still aimed, what I want done. The house was quiet for a moment. The garden was very still. Lily was looking at Suyin with the focused, unafraid attention she gave to things she was trying to understand. She had stopped extending her hand with the ring. She was holding it at her side now, looking at this woman who was very angry in a way that felt different from the anger Lily had seen before. Most anger she had encountered had a reason you could see. This anger had a reason underneath it that she could not quite find. She filed this. She would think about it later. Mr. O called Du-Yun. Du-Yun returned to the house 2 hours before he had planned to. He walked through the entrance hall without removing his coat. He went to his study first, alone, for 8 minutes. Then he came out and spoke to Mr. O for 4 minutes in the corridor, while Suyin waited in the sitting room with the composed impatience of someone who expected to be agreed with. Then Du-Yun came into the sitting room. He looked at Suyin. He sat down across from her, and he said, Tell me what happened. From the beginning. Suyin told him. She told it well, the way she did most things. Organized, plausible, emotionally calibrated. She had prepared this version. The ring missing from her room. The search. The child with the ring in her pocket. The housekeeper who should have controlled her daughter better and clearly had not, and perhaps the question of what else had gone missing deserved examination. Du-Yun listened to all of it. His face gave nothing away while she spoke. That was the face he wore when he was deciding something. And the people in his world who knew him well had learned that this face was not the face of someone who had not yet formed a view. It was the face of someone who had already formed a view and was deciding what to do with it. When she finished, he said, I will speak to the housekeeper. Suyin said, I want her dismissed today. I heard you, he said. His voice was level. I will speak to her. He found Stella in the staff wing corridor, standing very straight. Lily at her side holding her hand with the quiet solidity of a child who knew her mother needed something solid to hold on to. He looked at them for a moment. He said to Lily, Can you go to your room for a few minutes? Lily looked at her mother. Stella nodded once. Lily went. He looked at Stella. She looked back at him. She had decided, in the 2 hours of waiting, that she was not going to perform composure. She was simply going to have it, because performing it required energy she did not have to spare. Tell me what actually happened, he said. Not what she said. What happened? Stella told him. Quietly, directly, without drama or decoration. Lily found the ring on the floor of our room near the baseboard. She put it in her pocket to show me. She is 5. She does not know the value of jewelry. She was not hiding it. Du-Yun was quiet for a moment. Your room was searched. Yes. The ring was not found there. Lily had already taken it outside by then. He was quiet again. She watched his face do the thing it did when he was placing pieces together. Unhurried. Thorough. The machinery of a mind that had survived by making very few mistakes in its assessment of people and situations. He said, I will need to let you go. The words landed the way she had always known they eventually would. Not because she had stolen anything, not because she had done anything wrong, but because in a house like this one, when a woman like Suyin decided an outcome, the outcome generally arrived. She had known it from the moment she saw the ring in Lily's palm. She had been waiting for it since then, holding herself together around it. She nodded. She would need 2 days to arrange alternative accommodation. By the end of the week, he said. He sounded, she thought, like a man saying something he had not entirely decided was the right thing, but had decided was the only available thing. There was a difference. She had learned to hear the difference. She turned to go. She walked to the door of the staff wing. She put her hand on the frame. And then she stopped. She stood in the doorframe with her hand on the wood, and she thought about the 6 months of silence. She thought about Lily's face in the garden, holding out the ring she had not stolen. She thought about the two sounds she had heard from one floor up 17 months ago in this man's house, and what those sounds had meant, and what she had decided that night about the world her daughter should not grow up inside. She thought about all the reasons she had kept quiet, every single one of them. She examined them in that doorframe in the space of about 10 seconds. And then she thought about Lily. Just Lily. Nothing else. She turned around. The corridor was quiet. Diyun was still standing where she had left him, looking at the floor, not yet having moved, as though something in him had also not quite finished deciding. She looked at him. He looked at her. And in the space between them, in this house that she had cleaned and kept and moved through quietly for almost 2 years, carrying the heaviest secret of her life, Stella Osei opened her mouth and let it go. That little girl, she said. Her voice did not shake. She had not known until this moment that it would not shake, and she was grateful for it. The one you just sent to her room. The one whose mother you are firing right now. Diyun looked at her. She is yours. She is your daughter. The corridor was completely, entirely, suddenly silent in a way that had nothing to do with the absence of noise and everything to do with the presence of something enormous that had just landed in the space between two people and could not be taken back. Diyun did not move. Not for a very long time. He looked at Amara with the face she had never seen on him before. Not the boardroom face. Not the house face. Not even the unguarded sleeping face from a night neither of them had spoken of in 3 years. Something underneath all of those faces. Something more scary. Something without a name. End of part 1. Besties, if that ending just did something to your chest, you are not alone. Drop a comment and tell me what you think is going to happen in part 2. Subscribe and turn on the bell button to be notified as soon as I post part 2 so you won't miss it.